Thank you very much, Kathy. Well, we continue covering this story. The International Labour Organization says the legacy of the COVID-19 pandemic is projected to leave lasting labour market shifts. These include increased geographic and demographic inequality, rising poverty, and fewer decent jobs. The ILO also says the COVID-19 pandemic and the crisis has worsened pre-existing inequalities, hitting vulnerable workers harder. As South Africa records 34.5% unemployment rate in the second quarter of 2021, we are joined by Dr. Joni Musabayana, the ILO Director for Eastern and Southern Africa. Good evening, Dr. Joni. Let's talk about the latest global trends in unemployment. Your report shows that South Africa is clearly not alone in the accelerating unemployment rate globally.
Good evening, Xolani, and good evening to your viewers. Thank you for having me. Indeed, the labor market has been one of the heaviest casualties of the COVID pandemic. We are well aware of the impact on health, but the labor market has really taken a very hard hit. From 2020 to 2021, we have continued to lose total working hours, and that translates into jobs lost and reduced working hours for those that may continue to have jobs. And the net effect of this is that the global labor income has also dramatically declined. And when the global labor income declines, it means the amount of money workers are taking home is declining. The number of workers who are taking money home from the workplace is also declining, thereby dramatically increasing poverty, inequality, and unemployment.
Is it true, or how true is it that South Africa now has the highest official unemployment rate in the world? When you look at your report in the first quarter of this year, it says that the worst affected regions were actually in Latin America, the Caribbean, Europe, and Central Asia. According to that report, these are the regions that were hardest hit, but some reports are saying that this is the highest official unemployment rate in the world that South Africa has just recorded.
To answer this question fully, let me refer to two key issues. The first has to do with the quality of information gathering, the quality of data collection, and let's say the effectiveness of Stats SA in conducting the quarterly labor force surveys. And in this regard, we have to take our hats off to them for the very thorough job in which they do. That translates, of course, compared to other countries that may not be conducting labor force surveys. This is one issue that the ILO is very busy with throughout the African continent to ensure that countries are conducting labor force surveys. I may share with you that until recently, many African countries were only conducting labor force surveys after every 10 years, compared to South Africa's quarterly in a year, 4 times in a year. And what that tells you is that then the timeliness of the data that South Africa has is very high. So one would have to be circumspect about saying the worst in the world. We can say the recorded figures, it has the highest in the world. That may not necessarily translate on the situation in the ground in different countries, particularly on the African subcontinent, into, let's say, the worst unemployment situation. Having given that qualifier, it is true also that South Africa, of most countries in the subcontinent, has the highest unemployment rate. And that is largely driven by this issue of informality. South Africa has the lowest informality rate on the African continent. When you compare that, countries like Zimbabwe, Zambia, perhaps Uganda, they may have informality levels well above 50%, perhaps into the 60s, into the 80%. South Africa's informality rate is around 20-something%. And that means that the majority of the people that then lose their jobs because of COVID, those people directly become unemployed. Whereas when you have a huge informal economy, it acts as a buffer, and the new global definitions count people working in the informal economy as gainfully employed. Those two factors, I think, may account for the reality. This is not to discount that the unemployment situation in South Africa is dire. It's a sophisticated economy. It's an economy very well linked with the global economy, and therefore it responds to the global shocks. And the global shock of the pandemic has really hit the South African economy very hard. The lockdowns that we have seen, and that has translated directly into loss of working hours, loss of jobs.
Locally and globally, when are we likely to see recovery to pre-COVID-19 levels? And what exactly is going to get us there?
Some statistics may help. The working poor, meaning the people who are taking very low income from work, is now back to 2015 levels, which means the labor market had progressively been chipping away at working poverty as an element of the total unemployment cohort and poverty in general. And now, because of COVID, because of the lockdowns, because of the loss of jobs that we have seen, we are actually back to pre-2015 levels. That says that the mountain to climb, COVID has come and exacerbated an unemployment crisis that was already very difficult. Remember, we were already in the mid-20s before COVID, and now COVID has pushed us about 8-9% higher than pre-COVID levels. The aim of the National Development Plan 2030 was to decrease unemployment into the lower teens up to 2030. With the reality of COVID now, I think that it is fair to say that goal is now very far in the horizon. To get us there, however, the government is to be complimented for having put the Economic Recovery Plan, which is a far-reaching plan, which seeks to address the fundamental structural challenges of the economy, the heavy concentration of many sectors, the lack of clear linkages between large businesses and the small businesses, the challenges of the business environment that we have seen. All of these, I think, are issues that need to be tackled in the medium to long term. The focus on active labor market policies in the short term. We have seen the extension of the income relief from UIF. We have seen the extension of the youth employment program in the presidency, the YES program. And these active labor market programs are absolutely critical. The expanded public works is also doing a large share in trying to address this challenge. So these active labor market policies need to continue. But there is no substitute for robust economic growth. The growth rate has been around 1%. Economists say it needs to get to above 4% before we eat into the high number of unemployed that we have. And when you look at the likelihood of that, it doesn't look very near. But the statistics also show us that there are sectors that are good for growth. Trade, construction, agriculture, these are sectors that are able to contribute greater to employment, higher than their GDP contribution. But we know that those are also very manual sectors. The reality is that the fourth industrial revolution has also impacted, and therefore the manufacturing sector, the financing sector, which we see in the report that has been produced, are actually continuing to shed jobs. A fair share of that loss of jobs has to do with the continued mechanization, digitalization, automation that is going on. And therefore, when you look at all these factors, the future says skill, upskill, reskill. We need workforce that is good for the digital technology in which the digital economy which we are going into. And therefore, the work that the Department of Higher Education, the SETAs are doing in working to try to transform the economy from, let's say, a low-skilled into a high-skilled economy. These are the work that needs to continue to be done. The infrastructure program to boost employment, particularly in the short term, to boost economic activity, is also a good program that needs to continue to happen. The presidential infrastructure program is therefore a key tool in getting us hopefully closer to the pre-pandemic levels, which in any case were worse, so we need to look beyond the pre-pandemic levels. Let me hand over to you.
Dr. Joni Musabayana, the director there at the International Labour Organization for East Africa and Southern Africa, thank you very much for your time.